Let's dive into the mailbag for the Phillies, who have been making some news recently. Frank Klose is with us here. The Phillies mailbag is up at 97.3ESPN.com. And, Frank, before we dive into some mailbag questions today, the Phillies have ended the season of Vince Velasquez. He is on the 60-day DL now, so no more Vince Velasquez. But Matt Klentak sounds like, hey, Vince Velasquez going back in the starting rotation next year.
Well, I wouldn't totally write that down with permanent marker. What you don't want to do if you're Matt Klentak is you don't want to devalue Velasquez by saying, oh, yeah, we're going to demote him to the bullpen. You don't know what the offseason holds. You don't know what trades you might make. So you're just devaluing Velasquez if you happen to say, well, yeah, he's going to be in the bullpen next year.
Let's look at some other quick notes before we dive into the mailbag here. J.P. Crawford, who has been really hitting the ball down there at AAA, they moved him over to third base the other night. Give us a skinny on what this means for Crawford and maybe Maikel Franco.
You know, I think it's very similar to why you don't peg Vince Velasquez into being a reliever next year or, changing anything from right now is you want to give yourself as many options this offseason as possible. Now, I don't think that we should read into this too much, either on the account of Maikel Franco or Freddie Galvis. We certainly know Freddie Galvis has provided absolutely stellar defense this season. He's got 1 year left under contract with Phillies. He could be somebody who's moved. Who knows? Again, options. Maikel Franco, you know what? The story is not totally closed on him. A lot of people don't realize that he is basically the same age as Rhys Hoskins. Franco kind of came up rather early. He had a lot of expected of him really right away, throwing him into the 3 spot in the order. And so, I don't think the book is closed on Maikel Franco either, but what you want to have is some options because, the Phillies have spent the season kind of assessing what they have. And in terms of J.P. Crawford, if they know that they can feel comfortable with him playing third, maybe Franco is moved in a trade or maybe he's not. But if you have a really good opportunity to pick up a number 2 pitcher, one name I like to bring up a lot is Chris Archer, who's rumored to be available, who would be a great pitcher right behind Aaron Nola. Maybe Franco has to go to make that deal happen. Again, who knows? I think the Phillies just want to give themselves as many options as possible so that when they're in that off-season mode and making deals, they might be able to feel comfortable that they're covered, even though, it might not be a permanent solution for Crawford to play third base. Maybe, again, with Galvis only signed for 1 more year, and maybe they figure, all right, maybe he can cover third base for a year, and then we come up with something else. Or you know what? Maybe they just decide, we can move Galvis because, Crawford can play short. So what they don't want to do is go into this off season with few options. They want to give themselves as many options as possible so that they can react accordingly if there's some opportunities.
Frank Klose is with us. The Phillies mailbag is open here on 97.3 ESPN. Here is a question from the mailbag where they want to know if the Phillies will sign Manny Machado. That's a name that's being pushed around out there. Manny Machado. Steve would like to know, will the Phillies go after him after the 2018 season?
Yeah, and I think the reason a lot of this came up right now is the whole discussion about Crawford, about Galvis. Are you, if you're committing long-term to Galvis and you put Crawford at third, does that close off the possibility of Machado? Well, there's 2 things I think that are worth noting when we think about the possibility of Machado. The first one is one people might not like, and that is, hey, maybe he never even reaches free agency. Now, he's a member of the Baltimore Orioles. Orioles owner Peter Angelos really, really likes Manny Machado. He was not allowed to be put out on the trade market this year as the Orioles explored other options. So one thing that the Orioles owner, for all the criticism he gets for being stingy or for not being willing to make deals for players he likes, he may open up his checkbook and give Manny Machado what he wants because he loves Manny Machado. And if you're Peter Angelos, the owner of the Orioles, and you have all kinds of money, you basically are treating the team not for something that makes you money, but kind of as your hobby. If that's how you're approaching your team, don't you want Manny Machado? And the Orioles already sort of established a precedent because they bid against absolutely nobody to give Chris Davis a very large contract of 7 years and over, I forget the total dollar amount, but 7 years of Chris Davis when nobody else was really bidding anywhere near close just because the owner wanted Chris Davis. So one possibility is that he never actually makes free agency. And then the other possibility is he gets to free agency and the Phillies don't have the winning bid. So I think if he does reach free agency, Phillies will be all over him, and I think they will be doing what they can to try to sign him. But at the end of the day, if Manny Machado decides a team like the Yankees are a better fit, who will probably have some money by then because they won't be paying outrageous amounts of money for CC Sabathia and for Jacoby Ellsbury, right? They might have the money to do it. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you're to quote Ruben Amaro, if you're not first, you're last, right? Because if you lose out on Machado, then what? So I think the Phillies need to keep that in the back of their mind, but they can't, with Machado or Harper, they can't think for certain that they're going to get one of these guys when that day comes. And I think they'd like to, but until they're actual free agents and they have the ability to negotiate, you really can't take anything like that for granted. So it'll be a waiting game. The Phillies are in a great position financially to add Machado or any other big-name free agent after next season. But you just have to wait till you get there and find out what happens.
Hey, Frank, Tommy Joseph back in the lineup tonight. He's in a 5-for-56 slump. He's down to 236. What has this second half of the season maybe done for the Phillies' view of Joseph?
You know, the thing that sticks out to me the most, and I have said on your air plenty of times that, up until maybe as late as June, that, Joseph is great for a team because he can hit against lefties and you can use him in a platoon. But if you look at his numbers against left-handed pitchers, especially the second half of the season, they were absolutely abysmal. He's not doing himself any favors for the Phillies long term because, you know what, a guy like him, if he performed like he did last year, he had some power against some left-handed pitchers. You could put him in against a lefty, and then you put Ryan Howard in against a righty. You know, that was a nice little platoon combination who led the league in home runs at that position. But you know, he now when it matters, Joseph got the position. They handed him first base and say, all right, here you go. Let's see what you can do. He has not met expectations or he has not performed. And this is a performance-based business. And if you don't put up, you got to shut up or they're going to shut you down. And I think the really tough thing for the Phillies right now is, they brought Rhys Hoskins up. They put him in left field. They didn't take Joseph's position away. But in a way, it was sort of saying to Joseph, all right, you're on notice that as soon as we get one of these outfielders back, first base might not be yours anymore if you don't produce. And he has just gone into this terrible slump. I think that's going to make it really difficult for them to put him in their long-term plans. And I think they really especially sent him a message on Saturday when they played catcher Jorge Alfaro at first base with Rhys Hoskins in left field. This was supposed to be his position as long as Hoskins was in the outfield. Well, guess what? Here's a guy that hasn't played first base more than one single game at Lehigh Valley since joining the Phillies system, and we're going to start him in a major league game ahead of you. So maybe that sent him a message if he doesn't snap out of this. I mean, he's making the case for himself really difficult right now.
All kinds of messages flying around. Frank Klose with us. Here's the final question in the mailbag, Frank. Might we see the Phillies play the Little League World Series game in the future? Will the Phillies and the Little League World Series have a connection?
Yeah, this was kind of unfortunate. And the Phillies' short season Class A affiliate is the Williamsport Crosscutters. And this game, which was the Pittsburgh Pirates against the St. Louis Cardinals, happened on the Phillies field, essentially. And so a lot of people were asking, well, why aren't the Phillies playing this game? And unfortunately, it was a matter of poor planning. The Phillies' schedule, Major League Baseball schedule, already made. The Little League World Series schedule already made. And as you might imagine with all the logistics, changing both of those things would be too difficult. So the Phillies lost out this time, and MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred sort of said, Oh, yeah. It would make perfect sense for the Phillies to play in the next one here. But you don't really know where that's going to be. I think it's a real shame for the Phillies that they didn't get the chance to get that spotlight. It's their field. Although I will say the one big advantage the Phillies had was there are $4 million worth of renovations pumped into the stadium before it began this season. And Major League Baseball, they haven't told you how much they spent, but they completely redid the turf in that field to meet Major League specifications. So the Phillies benefit from that at least, but who knows when they're going to do it. They've used other locations like Fort Bragg. If you might remember, the Braves had a home game there a couple of years ago. I think they are trying to reach out, but I'm not sure that it's going to be for a while. But I think they did realize that this probably should have been the Phillies playing in their own stadium.
All right, maybe we'll see that in the future. It was pretty cool to watch that the other night, about 2,500 in attendance to see a Major League Baseball game in Williamsport, and you can, of course, get the mailbag questions. What's that?
I'm laughing because that may be the attendance for today's first game at the
That's a good point. Phillies mailbag, always open at 973ESPN.com. You can get your questions to Frank Klose at Frank Klose with a K on Twitter, and we answer your questions, talk some Phillies baseball right here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. At least there's been some intriguing things around the team with Hoskins being up and Crawford getting moved over. There's at least a little scuttlebutt around the team, which is more than we can say for most of this season, Frank. It's been a tough one.
Yeah, so at least there's some fun stuff to watch. And you know what? Rhys Hoskins, he definitely gave the Phillies something in return, those who stayed up to watch those late West Coast games. So,
that was me.
So that at least Phillies fans will have that.
All right, Frank, we'll catch up soon, pal. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.